Good morning. I would welcome you, but there's going to be a formal welcoming later, so I'm not going to welcome you just yet. But the bell ring signals the opening of our service. So we're going to start with music because that's what we always do. So Usher will start with the prelude, the senior order of service.
Chicago. We are a progressive community with a great history. Those two claims are not strained next to each other in my book. In fact, they have a lot to do with why we are here and what it is we do here. I'm told this is working now. There we go. I'm unafraid. Some of us are unafraid of a world without microphones because we'll make noise regardless. When I say we are a progressive community with a great history and that they are connected, I'm trying to make the claim that we make progress not despite our history, but fueled by our history as a resource. That we, as a new generation, and in this room we are blessed to have, I think, 4 generations, maybe 5 generations, depending on the day. I haven't counted. We have but 5 generations in a line of 1,000 generations. So we are a church that believes in powerful living community, that we gather up as a day like this. I feel so blessed by your presence. We believe in powerful living community, and we also feel in the presence and impact of the ancestors who brought us here. We are not made of our own ideas alone. We are not cut from whole cloth. We come from somewhere. And I come in this church to tell you that's not bad news, that's good news. There is a legacy that we carry forward. It is a legacy of love and commitment and aspiration and resilience, and the list will go on. Now, we carry it forward, but I believe it is our work in the brief time we have here in this world to offer up our own articulation of that legacy. We recreate it anew. So all that is old is present with us, and all that is on fire is being generated anew. And this is my first Unitarian Kwanzaa service, and I am so excited. I think in a way, from the amount I know, and I'm in a learning place, not a teaching place, in matters of Kwanzaa, is that it exemplifies this notion of taking that which is ancient, that which has been transmitted through culture and history and people, and making it new, framing it for today and connecting it not to just abstraction, but to the life we lead, the lives we lead, and what we're trying to build here and now. And in my gut and my heart, I feel like we have lots to build this year. So the claim to be progressive in 2025, that's a big claim, but one I think we're ready for and ready to live into. That, my friends, is why we worship together. That's why we build communities. That's why we welcome new folks into our circle, into our pews, and into our hearts. I thank you for the gift of your presence. I especially want to thank Mama Edie, who is a storyteller, a legacy bearer, and a creative community maker without compare, for bringing us her gifts today. I apologize for it as if you see a dropped E at the end of Edie's name anywhere, it's that darn Reverend Dave. My apologies for that. I want to thank Joe and Jim, who I think are behind me, who are deacons of this church, pillars of it. I say don't move around too much. The church has got to stay standing. And I thank them for putting this together and leading us in this, what will be a return to tradition for many, a continuation of tradition, and for others of us, an opportunity to learn and to grow and become part of this circle. So come, let us now worship together. We now have lit our chalice, which marks the entry of sacred time, and I will turn it over for the declaration of our covenant.
Good morning. Those of you who know our covenant, please recite it with me, as we do not have it printed. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning again. As we move forward with the service, one of the things that I'm reminded is nothing works out as planned. There were a lot of things we planned to do that may not get done today, but there will still be a service, I can say that. And I was reminded that this is the time for me to do my reading. But as I get into it, and I thought about it quite a bit. I spent most of the day yesterday thinking about it. Before I do the reading, I'm going to provide some context. And this is the context. This is from Wikipedia. Human history is a record of humankind from prehistory to the present. Modern humans evolved in Africa around 300,000 years ago and initially lived as hunter-gatherers. They migrated out of Africa during the last ice age and had spread across the Earth's continental land, except Antarctica, by the end of the Ice Age 12,000 years ago. So that's how we all got here. But it all started 300,000 years ago. The reason that I say that is sometimes we don't really understand time, because we think in time in terms of the time we have and how old we are. But we've been on this planet for 300,000 years. And some would say that we're in a sorry state, and we'll be talking about that possibly later today, to have been here 300,000 years. But I say that, and again, before I get into the reading, to share some personal history. My sister reached out to, and she's here, and I won't ask her to stand. My sister lives in a building, and she has some people that do genealogy. And she had people to actually take a look at our family's genealogy. So before I do the reading, I want to give you a brief idea of our genealogy. My grandfather, who died the year I was born, so I never met him, was Mark Harrington. Mark was born March 1868 in Mississippi. He was born the same year the Emancipation Proclamation was written. He was born a free man because of the Emancipation Proclamation. His wife, Julia Harrington, she was born in March of 1978 in Mississippi. Julia was not only my grandmother, she was my best friend. She was my teacher because we didn't have nursery schools, a lot of nursery schools and preschool programs, and I was able to read and write by the time I was 4 years old, so I owe her that as thanks. But my great-grandfather, what we know from genealogy, was Alfred Harrington. So that was my great-grandfather. What we understand from biblical records, Alfred Harrington was a slave owner. I don't know the status of his wife. His wife's name was Julia as well. So I don't know the status of his wife. So I'm saying that to provide a context before the reading, because when you talk about slavery and you talk about 400 years, I'm second generation born free in America. Now the reading. And this is from Frederick Douglass. And I do have copies. I did actually make a copy of his speech. If anybody wants something, they can see. And Dr. King's speech. I think it's like 12 or 20 pages long. But if you want a copy, you can see me. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be opposed upon them. And these will continue until they are resisted with other words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of the oppressed. And so now I want to bring up Mama Edie. Oh, I forgot. You can come on up. Jim forgot one of the things we do at church is do a hand of friendship. So if you want to warmly greet your neighbor as Mama Edie comes up, please do so. You can't get up out of your chairs, but.
Hallelujah, jolly-ada. Hallelujah, jolly-ada. Hey, jolly-ada. Hallelujah, jolly-ada. Hallelujah, jolly-ada. Hallelujah, jolly-ada. Good morning to you all. And happy Kwanzaa. Say what? Oh, okay. And happy whatever else you have to be happy about. And at the same time that we are living in times that have us kind of questioning some things, we always have something to be happy about. So don't ever let anybody steal your joy. Ashe? All right. Thank you all so much for being here. I know I'm not a member here, but I'm thanking you for being here anyway, because I have been coming here for the past several years to help to facilitate the Kwanzaa celebration, and it's always a joyful experience to be here. I want to share with you that, first of all, my daughter is here, which is very special to me, Ayana. And she's here from the Washington, D.C. area. And when we think about a time of a season of gift giving, Ayana was born on my birthday, June 2nd. And I always tell her that she's the greatest gift that I ever received. So I'm sorry, I just had to put that out there. But I want to share with you that the song that I just sang is a song from West Africa that calls for the Jali to come. It's a song that greets the Jali. And some of you may be familiar with the term griot. Is anybody familiar with the term griot? And so you probably know the term griot to basically refer to the storyteller. And the storyteller in West Africa and other parts of Africa as well is much more than someone who comes and shares folklore. But even that folklore has messages and it has meaning. And so none of it is to be taken lightly. But the storytellers in West Africa were born into families of storytellers. For example, one of my community sons, his name is Morikeba Kuyate. If you ever hear the name Kuyate in West Africa, everybody, oh, Kuyate, Kuyate, because they were raised to be storytellers. That's the service of that family to the community. And the storytellers are the people who keep us in touch with the things that we say are important to our communities. And so as we celebrate Kwanzaa, I'm here as a storyteller to remind us of the importance of, especially during this time, the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, which at the same time that they were developed as a part of the Kwanzaa celebration for African American people by Dr. Maulana Ron Karenga in 1966. The principles themselves are certainly not culture restrictive. Any of us and all of us need to be living according to these particular principles. And of course, different faiths and what have you have their own principles and standards that they live by. The Nguzo Saba is ours. And isn't it a wonderful thing for a people who have been downtrodden for so long to finally have somebody come up and say, you know, we're worthy of celebration too. One of the unfortunate things that has happened historically with our people, with African descended people, has been that anything that has been associated with us has often been devalued, been made a joke of, or forgotten, or intentionally obscured, or fought. So while people were telling our ancestors after slavery, and people were coming through the Great Migration and going to so many places around the country, if we were still struggling and somebody'd come along and say, well, why don't you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps? But then you're talking people who often had no boots. And even when we did pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, what happened to Tulsa? And Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was literally bombed with the consent and the approval of this government in 1921, was only one Black Wall Street. There were Black Wall Streets across the country, and interestingly enough, segregation helped to create those Black Wall Streets, because when people would go into town to buy items and what have you, they weren't allowed to try on hats. They had to either just buy the hat or not. And the same with shoes. They either had to just buy the shoes or not, because they weren't allowed to try them on. And if they came to get a refund, they probably wouldn't get the refund. They weren't really welcome in the schools. They weren't welcome in so many different places. So, you know, you get to a point where you say, well, forget all of that. I don't need y'all. We'll just go and create our own. And that's what they did. What'd they do? They pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and didn't have no boots. That is resilience. That is strength in a people who are determined to make it by any means necessary. Yes, we're worthy of a celebration. So I'm happy, I'm grateful that Dr. Maulana Ron Karenga created this holiday celebration. And while some people may take it as a joke, trust me, it's no joke. And I want to give all of you all the opportunity to applaud yourselves for being here to help us celebrate us. And at this point, I want to make sure that we have adequately and appropriately welcomed in our ancestors. So this ceremony that we've referred to, called pouring libation, you know, what is libation but a little refreshment, right? So I remember when people would come to our home to visit, my father would ask his friends, would you like a little libation? You know, but we knew what he was talking about. But that ain't what we got, you know. So it's refreshment. And what can you do for your ancestors? They're gone, right? They've gone on, but yet they're not gone on. They're still here. And they're here as long as we speak their names. Ashe? They're here as long as we speak their names. And so I want to, first of all, go back to that creator known by so many names around the world, but that essence of life that brought forth all other life, to give thanks to that essence that created life and breath and family and friends and the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars and the clouds and a sky show that is there for us every day, and all we got to do is pay attention. Take a moment and look up. Free sky show, y'all. That essence who's created variety. Talk about Kuumba and creativity. Every snowflake different since time began. We ask and pour libation. Please respond with Ashe. To those ancient ones who Joe spoke of, who lived on this earth 300,000 years ago, to those ancient ones in Africa who were the first architects, the first hunter, planters, the first mothers, fathers, sisters, husbands, lovers, and friends, the first healers, the first doctors, the first teachers, the first engineers, the first explorers, to all of those who established what we would then later come to know as civilization, we ask and pour a libation. To the ancestors who came across the Atlantic Ocean during the time of the Middle Passage, and even to those who came before, who ended up in places like California. Is anybody familiar with the book called They Came Before Columbus? Did y'all know it was black folks over here who came before Columbus?
Yes, I do.
All right, all right. There were Africans who were explorers before Columbus was even thought of, and established relationships, not conquest. Didn't come over thinking that they had to take over everything. They established relationships with the indigenous people who were here. And in many cases, they became family. To all of those ancestors, however they got here, and many of them having packed no bags, many of them by force, many of them who suffered terribly, but who showed resilience and strength in a way that many of us could never, ever even imagine. We ask him pour libation. To ancestors like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, name some other common ancestors, some people who you know publicly who have contributed to life and resilience. Speak those names out loud.
Tony Walker.
So many people have contributed to lifting the quality of life for human beings. Too many for us to name, but they all will be honored within our spirits. And now I ask you to speak the names of your own personal ancestors, your mothers, your fathers, your papas, your big mamas, anybody in your family who has passed away, who has made their transition, who's gone on to that life journey, keeping in mind what Proctor David said earlier, that we didn't get here alone. We stand upon somebody else's shoulders and a whole lot of somebody else's shoulders. So let's, in a sense of humility, of being humble, acknowledge those people who loved us, who raised us, who prayed for us, who nursed us back to health when we were sick, who helped us to feel loved and that we belonged. Mention those names right out loud. I'm gonna start with my parents, Christine and Jack McLeod. Ashe. Speak those names right out loud.
Tom Walker. Susan Walker. Mitchell.
Come on, got some more names.
Michael Hughes.
Ashe, ashe. Don't ever be embarrassed or ashamed to speak the names of your ancestors. They're still looking out for you. Speak their names whenever you have an opportunity to do so, and take that moment to give thanks. To those spirits yet unborn, to those babies waiting to come through. We got one little baby, just 7 months old, is here with us today. We pray that we do the work that we need to do today, so that as they come into this world, their life won't be quite so hard, so that we've removed some of the rubble from the road, so that they won't trip and fall quite as much as we did, so that they won't have to carry some of the burdens that we carry today. To those spirits in whom we have hope will come and bring a bit more light into this world, so that we can heal and grow as one people again. We ask him pour a libation. It is done. And now, the moment that you've all been waiting for. Our Kwanzaa table. First of all, excuse me, our dates are from December 26th through January 1st. So 7 days with 7 candles and 7 ritual objects to represent the 7 principles. To represent the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba. And we'll begin with just talking a little bit about what you see here. Now, those of you who are members here, you have seen this experience before. Many of you, can I get a show of hands of those of you who actually celebrate Kwanzaa, either at home or at church or at somebody's house? Raise your hands up high so I can see them. Yeah, okay, that's good, All right, thank you. And so, to understand what we have here, we start with the mkeka mat. Please say mkeka, mkeka. Now, I know some people say makeka, but I was taught by my Kiswahili teacher, which is the language that we use for these objects, that you simply go from that consonant and slide right on into the next one. So mkeka, the mkeka mat. The mkeka mat represents the foundation upon which our lives were built. And that's the Nguzo Saba, that it represents the principles upon which our lives are built, so that we have a guide, right? Our principles, the 10 Commandments, or the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, the Torah, whatever people have embraced to give them guidance, Ashe? And so that is what the mkeka mat represents, that we have a firm foundation, Ashe? And then upon the mkeka mat, we have the kinara. Please say kinara. The kinara represents the stalk of life from which we all came. And we know now, because Brother Joe has told us, that goes back to 300,000 years, to those first humans born on the continent of Africa. The 7 candles. One candle is called Shuma. Please say Shuma. The plural form of that is Mi Shuma. Please say Mi Shuma. And the number 7 in Kiswahili is Saba. So these are the Mi Shuma Saba. Go ahead, y'all. See, it's a wonderful thing. And then we will talk about each of the principles as we light the candles. And so we have representatives from the church who will come up to help in the candle lighting process. And then something that we did near the beginning of the service was going around and shaking hands and giving people greetings. This is the unity cup, or the kikombe. Say kikombe. Cha umoja. Kikombe cha umoja. All right, see, that's the speech therapist in me. I kind of know how to break that stuff up. So the kikombe is the cup that typically, symbolically, you pass it around in your home or at whatever gathering you happen to be at, and you kind of gesture that you're taking a sip. Of course, we live in a time now where we got to be careful about how you share certain items. But the kikombe, this is the unity cup. It's just, it provides the opportunity to share a drink. And it reminds us of the importance of umoja, of unity. And then we have the fruits and vegetables, because As many of you are aware, Kwanzaa without the A at the end, without two A's at the end, with only one A at the end, is the actual Kiswahili word. And that basically means first fruits. The second A was added by Dr. Karenga to fit within his paradigm of how he wanted this to happen with the symbolic number of seven things. And the first fruits, it's in African countries and in many other countries again as well, people have harvest festivals, yes? Because as Joe had said earlier, in the beginning, people were hunter-gatherers, yes? And so people provided food for themselves. So when they had a good harvest, it was time to celebrate, yes? So they would have a wonderful celebration. They'd have the drummers coming out and the storytellers would come. Oh, incidentally, one thing I want to tell you about the storytellers is that not only do the storytellers remind us of what is important for our communities to sustain themselves, but the storyteller, the term the term griot is actually a French word for an African experience. The term jali, hey jali ada, which was in the song, is actually the West African term that represents the storyteller. So my personal preference is to use the term that comes from the people of the culture that speaks to the significance of the storyteller, the jali, rather than honoring the term that was provided by the French who came and conquered them a long time ago. The fruits and vegetables represent the fruits of our labor. Whatever it is that we have attempted to do during the year, it's a time for us to take stock. Well, what have we accomplished? Did we accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves? Or maybe could we try a little bit harder? Maybe we should change direction. Maybe we should try something different. But it gives us time to think about and talk about those kinds of things with each other. So Kwanzaa is not a time, you don't wait until December and go dust off the Kanara to set it up on the table so it look nice and pretty, so when company comes by, you say, oh, you got your Kwanzaa table, how nice. Dress up in cute little African clothes. That's part of it in the beginning when you're learning. But once you've embraced the significance of Kwanzaa and the potential that it has to become more than that. It has to become a matter of consciously embracing and living according to those principles 365 days of the year. That's not to say that you go through your day and say, okay, did I do number one, number two, number three? No, it doesn't work like that. But you have opportunities when someone tests you, for example, and maybe calls you out of your name, and you know that's not your name. You have an opportunity then to practice the principle of kujichagulia and insist, excuse me, that is not my name, and I will not be disrespected. You have the opportunity when you know of someone in the community that just started a new business to go and support that business. That's Ujamaa, which is the day that we're celebrating today for cooperative economics. So you have opportunities throughout the course of your day. It's just a matter of being conscious of them. And you'll find that as time goes by, and again, you don't have to be black. You don't have to be African American. Take these principles with you however you can embrace them. They're not against anybody's religion. And you'll see as we talk about them, there's something here that all of us universally can embrace if our minds are simply open enough to receive them. So as we think about the fruits and vegetables, we not only want to talk about what we might have accomplished so far, but it's a time for families and friends to come together to plan, where do we go from here? And that's what we're going to be talking about in the conversation that we have. I told Joe that I wanted us to do a deep dive this year to not only address the principles and say what they are and what have you, but to do a deep dive and to talk about how do we use these principles in order to address the issues that face us today. How do we use these principles to become stronger, to be more unified, to heal? Those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about in our conversation this evening. And then you have, oh, I should mention the corn. The corn is called muhindi, Muhindi, say muhindi, please. Muhindi. And there's another term that's often used for it too, which is muhindi. Muhindi and vibunzi. Muhindi and vibunzi. So you can use either of those terms. It still represents the corn. And in each household, there should be at least one ear of corn. And that ear of corn represents the children. Because if you look at this ear of corn, if you take one kernel and plant it, you'll end up with a corn plant, yes? And then from that corn plant, you can plant other kernels, and you can end up with a whole field of corn that all began with just one. And that's how significant we are as individuals. Each one of us makes a significant contribution. And then, of course, we have the zawadi, or the gifts. Everyone, please say zawadi. And the gifts represent gratitude. You know, you give a gift to somebody, not because it's time. It's that time of year. Okay, I better head to Walmart. You give a gift out of gratitude for the presence of that person in your life. Ashe? And it's like saying, thank you. Thank you for being part of my life. And so you have zawadi, you have gifts. And it occurs to me, I don't think I said the name for the fruits and vegetables, did I? That's called masao. Please say masao. Masao, okay. And there we have our Kwanzaa table. Now we're going to have members of the church to come up, and we're going to light the candles. And so we have for Umoja, Unity, we have Jim Proctor. So Jim, would you come on up? And where'd you go? Okay, all right. So why don't you come down here so you can light the candle? Yeah. And we light the black candle first. That represents the people, but this is also on December 26th, the first day. That's a special day for the children. So did you want to speak to it?
Umoja, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. I did some research on this, but I'm in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the research that I did. I'll let you do that. But I'll just speak from my own heart. I am convinced that we need to find and maintain unity as families, as communities, as nations, and as a world, now more than ever. So many of us worldwide are filled with an unnerving anxiety as we go into 2025 with profound uncertainty. We are witnessing a rapid social regression led by power, greed, and corrupt so-called political leaders, and fear. I cannot go down the list of inequalities we face today, including race, gender, education, nutrition, climate, economics, crime, mental illness, healthcare, and on and on and on. But with Umoja, there is still hope. We are developing new and young leaders whose voices are being heard. We are bridging the generation gap where the young and the old are breaking bread together, protesting together, and learning together. In my family, we talk about many of these things together. The age range is from my 95-year-old mother, my wife and my generation, our children's generation, and their children's generation, to my almost 7-month-old grandson who is here today. Obviously, he cannot contribute, but he can hear us and he can feel the vibe. That's Umoja for me.
And I would even say that even the baby contributes by the baby's very presence. That's love, isn't it? All right, so our next one for Kuji Chagulia. Everybody say that one?
Kuji Chagulia.
Okay, for self-determination, that's going to be Aaron Proctor.
It'll be let me say it. You can say it. He had to work.
Hi, I'm Aaron's sister and Jim's daughter.
He had to work today.
Kujichagulia. To define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves.
And then for the third day for Ujima, for collective work and responsibility, we have Natasha Walker.
Ujima. Ujima invites us to see that regardless of our personal resources and comfort, we cannot succeed as people of African descent, as humans of any background, if any member of our community is suffering. The principle of collective work and responsibility is not restricted only to actions that attend to the basic needs of a community. Ujima also applies to the work that must happen in communities in order to regain our self-determination, pride, and live to our full potential. Ujima is indeed a collective effort. It's about each of us rigorously looking at where we can step up and do more, not for our own benefit, but for the collective good. If everyone did what they could, holding on to the vision of the collective good, change can happen. Each of us has the responsibility to ask, what does my community need? What direct work can I do? What else can I do to support those doing necessary work that I cannot do? As you reflect on your year, ask yourself, what actions have I taken to further the well-being of my community? And as you look into next year, what is one direct action and one supportive action you can take?
And now celebrating the Karamuya Ujamaa, the Feast of Ujamaa for Cooperative Economics, we have Amos Biggers.
Ujamaa, the principle that addresses cooperative economics, where we build and maintain our own stores, shops, businesses, and profit from them. I've done this service several times, and I always address and approach these principles from how we perform and support these principles in our own home. And I will say, every year, there's always an opportunity, and every day, hopefully, there's an opportunity in my household to support while we do not build and maintain or haven't maintained and built a business of our own. We do support, when the opportunity presents itself, a black-owned business or a business that was generated from African descent, whether that be myself having influence on my condo board, when I was on my condo board, to when there's a project to be delivered, as much as we hate those, to seek bids out from a black-owned business for that project. And we do put forth the effort when we go out in the neighborhood and support a business, whether it be a restaurant or so forth, that we do go out and support one of the black-owned businesses and restaurants in the neighborhood, which there are many. So we're kind of fortunate that we are not in the situation where we're digging and looking for such. So that's what Ujamaa means to me and my household.
And for the Feast of Nia, for purpose, we have Aubrey Totter.
Nia, purpose. Nia, purpose. To make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. For me, as a spokesperson of the younger community or the younger generation, purpose, I don't know what that means yet. For me, I like to walk in faith, and I believe that God or whoever I put my faith in will lead me to find my purpose eventually. I feel like if I keep stepping wherever life takes me, it doesn't matter what choices I make or whatever I do in my life, eventually I will find my purpose in this world, and I will do what I'm supposed to be doing, and I will do what I'm destined to be.
I think that was a very powerful statement. It's a powerful statement about faith. Yeah, you keep doing what you're supposed to do, and you're going to be where you're supposed to be. Ashe. And for Kuumba, please say Kuumba. Creativity. Creativity. We have John Rice.
The world turns on its axis, and we move around the sun, which is never in the same place, for it is moving too. So change is our reality. We create to survive a change in reality, which we don't control. So when you find you have painted yourself in a box, then think outside the box. Be creative. Go create the means to your new reality. Change your face. Renegotiate your head. Kuumba, that's what it means to me.
we have Imani for faith. We have Liz Talbert.
Imani, faith. To believe with all our hearts and our people in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. So to me, as a person leading the young people, this actually means a lot to me. I feel like we have to appreciate all of the struggles that all of the people before us went through in order to appreciate the ministry that we put into the kids today. This is a principle that I live by every day because I feel like I need to find or research more or deeper about what came before me in order to keep steering the youth into the right way.
And at this point, I'd like to give a special thank you to our drummers. We have Olu Shakur. And we have Baba Surah Dupart. And some of you all might be familiar with the Sun Drummers. Anybody? Remember the Sun Drummers? Raise your hand. All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. That's that brother Surah, one of the Sun Drummers. Let's give it up. Ashe. Well. Us in our conversation, we're going to take a deep dive into personal responsibility for looking at whatever it is that we can do and looking at why aren't some of the things happening that we know need to happen, and how is it that certain things are happening that shouldn't. I won't mention anything in particular. I'm just going to let you resonate on that for a minute. But I'm going to turn this back over to Joe at this point, okay? And again, my name is Mama Edie Armstrong, and I thank you again for being here.
Good morning again. Yeah, before I do the reading, I'm going to take the liberty to introduce a few people. The first is a First U member and President of Cook County Board, Tony Preckwinkle, who came in late. President Preckwinkle. Also, the person leading our conversation later today, Dr. Terry Solomon, whom I've known for, well, I won't say how long I've known Terry, because I know a lot of people a lot of time, so I won't add any years to her. Terry, you want to stand up? And last, but certainly not least, because it's really pretty interesting, our cameraman from NBC5. What's interesting, and I said it really leads into the reading I'm going to do, is I went over to introduce myself, and he reminded me that he worked with Patrick around the African Festival of the Arts. I was involved with the African Festival of the Arts between 1998 and 2017. I was chairman of the board for 15 years. So it's ironic that somebody that has worked with somebody that I know would be here today, but that's how life is. So. And like I said, it's directly connected to my next reading. And if you have not read the letter from a Birmingham jail, to put it in context, that Martin Luther King Jr. was not always revered. And he wound up in Birmingham. He got a lot of pushback. And most of that pushback was the ministers, because they felt that he was embarrassing them and causing them trouble. So it wasn't just the community, the local community, it was the ministers in Birmingham that were concerned. And the black ministers were the most concerned, because they didn't know what would happen as a result of this. And he was jailed, and he was in jail, and so he wrote this letter. And I did, and if you want to see me later, I can email you the speech from Frederick Douglass, and I can email you the letter from a Birmingham jail. But this is the reading. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives in the United States can never be considered an outside anywhere within its bounds. Dr. Martin Luther King. So at this point, I guess I will close, because I'm the last person to speak. And that'll put us pretty much close to on time. So I thought about how I would close. And actually, I came to church yesterday, because most of you came through the back door and entered the vestibule, and you walked through two wooden doors. Did anybody read the writing that's up over the doors? Anybody know there was writing up over the doors? Okay. And when you walk out, there's writing on the doors as you go out. And so I came here because there was some wording there that has really captured me, and I wanted to understand. So I'm not going to give all of the wording, but the wording that really captured me walking in was, up from the world of the many. This is the actual word. Up from the world of the many to the world of the one. Up from the world of the many to the world of the one. I couldn't figure out what that meant. So I went to Google. And Google AI told me what it meant. This is a quote from philosopher Ken Wilber in his book, A Brief History of Everything, where it represents the concept of moving from a limited collective perspective to a more expansive individual understanding of reality. 3 key points about the quote. The world of the many. It refers to the ordinary, everyday experience of being immersed in the multitude of separate things and perspectives in the world. The world of the one. This represents a higher level of consciousness, where the individual transcends the limitations of the separate self and experiences a unified, interconnected reality. And lastly, spiritual growth. The quote is often used to describe the journey of spiritual development, where one moves from a focus to the external world, to a deeper understanding of the inner self and the underlying unity of all things. So when you leave, if you look up at the doors, you'll read this, which I found out was a verse from Isaiah 55. For ye shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. So let it be. Amen. Ashe. Our service has ended, and our conversation will start a little later. Thank you. We have some closing music. And that's Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it's Alicia Keys from Super Bowl 50. I think it's 55.
Every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has facing a rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory.
Thank you. We have refreshments up these stairs and through the hallway. Please help yourself to refreshments and come back down here. We can have our community discussion right down here where we have the mics all set and all set up. So there are lightweight foods, there's water, and there's some different kinds of drinks.